You know what Pokemon really deserves some love? Hitmonlee. Not Hitmonchan, not Hitmontop, Hitmonlee. Let me tell you why. Much like many other Gen 1 Pokemon, Hitmonlee has a bit of history to him. He was initially designed as just a thematic counterpart to Hitmonchan, the kick to his punch. Then Hitmontop came in to say, it's all in the mind, and connected all three of them in Gen 2 as Tyring evolutions. This is where Hitmonlee's troubles start. After the addition of Top, Hitmonlee became what I refer to as the middle child of the Hitmon trio. What do I mean by that? Well, Hitmonchan's the older brother because he got all the good stuff first with his elemental punches. Hitmontop is the youngest of the three and was given a bunch of support from Papa Game Freak with good abilities and a diverse move pool. That leaves Hitmonlee smack dab in the middle, getting only the crumbs of what his other two siblings already got. Between the little bro blade and Mr. All Boxer No Shorts, poor old Leg Day Lee doesn't have anything to his name aside from, well, his name. But our boy Lee has more important problems to deal with than hypothetical sibling dynamics, and his most prominent problem is written all over his face. Or lack thereof. You might have noticed that so far I haven't shown any of the modern official artwork or the current 3D model for Hitmonlee. And there's a reason for that. It's actually the very reason I chose to make this video. But I gotta warn you right now, once I show you this, you will never see this Pokemon the same way ever again. Your mind will be forever changed and will never be able to unsee the truth of Hitmonlee. You will be cursed with this knowledge from here on out and will know exactly how I felt about this mon since 2013. Are you ready? Alright, I gave you fair warning. 3, 2, 1, what the f***? So, when I first saw this design back in 2013, I wasn't quite sure what was wrong with it, but I knew I didn't like it. However, over the past few years, I've been getting back into making art, learning all the terms and techniques involved in the craft. Follow me on my socials if you want to keep up with that stuff. And now I can finally pinpoint what the issues are with this modern design, thanks to my newly developed artist's eye. And yes, I know the color palette is a lot more washed out than it was in the original design, but every Pokemon got hit with a wash cycle with a mainline game switch from sprites to 3D models. Nah, for this, I'm going to be going over design critiques that are specifically for he. Let's start with this most eye-catching feature. The eyes. Originally, the Skullgirls were almond-shaped and filled in the black triangles on his face. Eye holes? But the 3D model introduced in Gen 6 squished them down to soft ovals and widened his pupils to match. I didn't know why this bothered me for a while until I learned about the term negative space, which refers to the area around the subject of an image. It's usually not meant to be the part of a design that draws your attention, as its very existence is about the lack of stuff there, so a bad use of negative space is distracting because of how empty it is. By shrinking the eyes without changing the black space surrounding it, Lee's left with these awkwardly shaped triangles just sitting on his face, perfectly content with mocking anyone who notices, like, yeah, we could put something in this space, but we won't. His head also has some issues, or more specifically his shoulders. His design is supposedly based on the headless men from various Asian mythos, so having his shoulders high in his body with his face in the center made sense. However, the 3D model lowered them just enough to give him a noticeable cranium. Not just the arms, but the eyes and shoulder width as well. Originally, the top of Lee's head was the widest part of his body, giving him a nice slimming build. But when the newer model lowered these parts, they wound up rounding out this section. Now he looks less like a headless kickboxing master and more like a tan sans. Outside of that, the only other noteworthy change is his hands. Being mostly 2D between the mainline games and the anime, his hands kept their anatomy pretty ambiguous, meaning he could have either 2 fingers and a thumb or 3 straight fingers depending on which looked better in any given frame. Unfortunately, 3D models don't have that same luxury, and Lee was defaulted to having 3 fingers anytime he's in the 3rd dimension. On their own, it's not a huge drawback, but combined with everything else his design suffered from when they made the switch, he now looks less like a kicking fiend and more like a spring-loaded egg holding gardening tools. Specifically these things. Apparently they're called hand cultivators. Well, Eggly, you better start digging, because I'm trying to cultivate some interest in you. What's this? Ah. Patient Zero. While I was looking at Lee's appearances over the years to figure out why they made these changes in Gen 6, I found out it all came back to this. Hitmonlee's updated art from the release of Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green. It all started here. The muted colors, the oval-shaped eyes, the lowered shoulders, even the fingers are posed in a way to keep their anatomy vague. Several elements from this design were used in his Global Link artwork and later adapted into his official 3D model in Gen 6. Now at first I thought, that was it. Just a quick note of, okay, new model based on the art from Gen 1's GPA remakes, and it'd be straightforward from there. I was not prepared for just how deep this design history rabbit hole really goes for this simple little Kiki boy. You're all coming with me! Get in here! Hitmonlee's design started out in 1996 with the original Ken Sugimori art for Pokemon Red and Green, as well as Red, Blue, and Yellow in 98. Hitmonlee's anime debut uses the same design for reference, along with some new key art in 97, as well as his 3D model in Pokemon Stadium that came out in 99. Things were then quiet for a while in Lee country until 2004, when Fire Red and Leaf Green released and all the Gen 1 Pokemon got new Sugimori art, including Lee, where we see this first instance of his smaller eyes and lowered arms. However, the anime didn't seem to get the memo and continued to use the classic design in 2005, where he had his first anime appearance post Fire Red Leaf Green. There's some integration of the new design in his Diamond and Pearl sprite in September 2006, but that was barely noticeable on account of it being a pixelated graphic for a 32-bit game. However, it was very noticeable in December 2006 when Battle Revolution gave us this pocket monstrosity. Look at those eyes. Fast forward to 2008 with Platinum giving him a slightly updated sprite that they animated in black and white, followed by September 2009 where Heart Gold and Soul Silver gave us a sprite that resembles his newer design the closest. So now the sprite finally looks like the updated reference art. That is where this timeline should end, right? Nope! December 2009 gave us Pokepark Pikachu's Adventure, where they used the original design for the Hitmonlee in that game. And then in July of 2010, the Paul vs. Barry episode gave us another Hitmonlee using the original design. Then, in that very same year, in October of 2010, Pokemon Global Link launched and gave every Pokemon another updated piece of artwork, giving us the final, official, modern key art for Hitmonlee. Okay, this is it. This is the art I see literally everywhere when modern Pokemon mentions the Lee Man. Are we done? Of course we're not done. November 2012, Pokédex 3D gets a Pro upgrade where Hitmonlee has his original design again. And then in October 2nd of 2013, the Pokemon Origins special aired and Red uses a Hitmonlee with again the original design. And if you think that wasn't confuzzling enough, merely 10 days later, X and Y launched, giving us the 3D model they have been using for every mainline game ever since. Okay. Alright. That's the one. This is the model they have been using for everything. We're done now, right? Okay. So moving on from September 2014, Super Smash Bros. For 3DS has a Hitmonlee trophy using the original design. Is it the same model from Pokédex 3D Pro? I don't know, and at this point, I don't care. November 2014, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire launch using the current 3D model. September 2015, Pokemon Super Mystery Dungeon launches and has a Hitmonlee with the original design. November 2016, Sun and Moon, new model, next in line. March of 2019, Hitmonlee has a cameo in the Sun and Moon anime with, you guessed it, the original design! Pokemon Smile. It wasn't until August of 2020 that the anime finally used the modern design when a horde of Hitmonlee made a cameo in the episode Solitary and Menacing. And that is it! That is the full timeline of Hitmonlee's design history. It is wild how much of this timeline was muddied up just from the anime still using the original design for reference, while the games were using the new design. Sometimes. I'm willing to bet the showrunners just never got around to updating his model sheet for the anime, considering each new generation gives them literally hundreds of other designs they have to keep up with. Can't exactly blame them for not updating the design of Amon with barely any screen time. That's right, out of all the times he showed up in the anime just to muck up this whole timeline, most of them were either for some generic battle to fill time, or in a group of henchmen to fill out the space. Aside from his debut episode, his only notable appearance in that whole history was when Barry used one against Paul. And even that was pathetic! Seriously, he landed a high jump kick and a close combat on a normal type, didn't knock it out, and got... Barry, my dude, what EVs do you spec him into? Did you think Blaze Kick still dealt special damage? Did you really think the kick punch was all in the mind? Breaking news! Hitmonlee is a fighting type. Most of them are physical attackers. And that leads us to another problem for our boy Lee. Despite having springs for legs, Hitmonlee has a really hard time standing out. Being a Gen 1 Pokemon means he's very susceptible to the same problem as many other Gen 1ers. Power creep. With new generations always adding more mons, and with how splashable the fighting type is, anything Hitmonlee can do is done better by a newer addition to the dex. Because of that, poor boy Lee ends up getting glossed over a lot, and frankly, I can't blame people for doing so. Hitmonlee doesn't have much of an identity compared to lots of other mons released in the later gens. Oh, you're a fighting type with a high base attack stat and can learn lots of physical damage moves? Take a number and wait in the lobby. Now, don't get it twisted. Hitmonlee is not a bad Pokemon in most scenarios. I mean, 120 attack is still 120 attack. He's still a high-velocity problem solver. It's just that being one of the first fighting types means he had a lot of room for later fighting types to innovate on. With all these new mons taking what he was good at and improving upon them, Lee really needs some new tools of his own to stand out. And fortunately for him, he had stuff taken away. Oh wait, that's a typo. Fun fact, did you know that Hitmonlee has had 4 signature moves taken away from him? Not counting TMs, Hitmonlee was the only Pokemon that could naturally learn all 4 of these moves before Game Freak either forced him to share his toys with his younger sibling, or took them away entirely because he couldn't play nice. With all these newer mons getting more tools, Hitmonlee somehow got less. Even the stuff he did get, he'd often have to share with his evolutionary brothers because sharing is caring, as Papa Game Freak always says. Am I projecting? I might be projecting. But even that's inconsistent because the types of moves the other Hitmons get... No. The types of moves most fighting types get is ridiculous. Chan will always get easy to design moves because a punch is the simplest kind of attack outside of a tackle. Top's design is wacky enough that they can justify giving him whatever so long as it involves his centrifugal force. And those two are just examples for pure fighting types. The amount of moves a dual type can learn will double, if not triple, that potential move pool. But for Lee, all he has is kicking. And not even all the kicking, just some of it. All of his moves can be learned by stronger fighting types and then some. Even with their own kicking moves. Heck, Hitmonchan can learn Trailblaze, but Hitmonlee can't, despite the move describing the user's nimble footwork. Hitmonlee's meant to be the master of the foot, but he's not a masterful Lee. He's a desperate Lee, as in desperate Lee in need of some sauce for his move pool. But I know it's a lot to ask for. I mean, he's only one mon after all. Coming up with so many new tools for him while keeping it all balanced would be an insane amount of work to ask for. It would be absolutely crazy if someone took all that time and effort to create unique kicking moves for every type that didn't have one, just so this single gimmick Pokemon out of 3 could have some semblance of an identity. Choke kick, dive kick, lightning kick, sting kick, cycle kick, hazard heel, stone stomp, dust kick, channel kick, mirage kick, triple axle, Venus kick, piston kick, quick stomp, mythic kick, yes! Sparring these two, they're all original. I left out a few, cause their spots were already full. Now I could go into a lot more detail about all that went into making these moves, but typing them all out bloated the script by an extra 3 pages, so let me know in the comments if you want to hear all of that. I can make another extra love video talking about them and some other behind the scenes stuff. Now, was making all these excessive? Yes. Are any of these moves overpowered? Well, why don't you go over to Direclaw and ask them about balance? Bit of a tangent, but seriously, how did they think 3 status conditions in one move was in any way fair and balanced? Wait a second. 3 status conditions in one move? I know who you are! I knew it! Huh. That move pool went deeper than I thought. If only he had the ability to swim in it. That's right, this part isn't all exclusive Lee moves. I designed these to mix well in the movesets of their respective types. Well, most of them. While he would have access to them all, what really makes these moves Lee-flavored would be his new ability, which gives him +1 priority to all kicking moves. Yes, even if the word kick isn't in the name, because that's never stopped abilities before. The Fang moves get the damage boost from Tough Claws, and they're not claws at all. Well, unless you technically count them as the claws of the mouth or something. Now, if by chance any of these new moves or this ability happen to show up in future Pokemon games, then Pokemon Company, I'll happily accept my payment in either newest Cavalier merch or by making Deoxys playable in Smash. I'm only partly joking. But which part? You'll just have to guess. So why did I do any of that? Why did I just make a list full of kicking moves for every type, most of which being originals that had to be designed from the ground up? Simple. When it comes to Pokemon, you can get out what you put into it. Hitmonlee isn't just a plain one-note gimmick of a Mon. He has potential. I can see it. I just showed you it. I did a karaoke cover of the Pokerap describing it. And I'm hopeful Game Freak, TPC, or someone else over there will be able to see it too. They've already been at the sort of thing since Gen 7 with the regional variants, Gen 6 if you want to count Megas, and I'd like to believe that Hitmonlee will get some of that spotlight in due time. Of course, they include the other Hitmons if and when that does happen, but I don't think it would take away from what makes Lee special. Hitmonchan could easily get some new punch moves since they're fairly easy to design. As for Hitmontop, has the society unfairly given you enough? I'm sure they'll think of something. His design is pretty flexible. And speaking of design, maybe they could also find the time to revamp his current 3D model? I mean, they already did that with the Kanto starters. I'm hoping it's not too much to ask to live in a world where Egg Lee doesn't haunt my playthroughs anymore with those uncanny eyes. But if I can only ask for one thing, it would be to please show Hitmonlee some love. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. Gotta be honest here, I was never planning on making another video like this. I've been actively uploading on YouTube for about 8 years at this point, and have been seeing very little success with what I made. After the fallout of 2020 and 2021, I was just gonna upload what little I managed to get done on the Tauros project and just quietly retire from YouTube. I was not expecting those videos to become some of my most popular in years, keeping my channel sudden jump in both subscribers and support. I didn't want to disappoint all the new peeps that showed up only to see a freshly abandoned channel, so I decided to make another one of these types of videos on another Pokemon I like. Keep in mind I'm still only doing this as a hobby since I'm not interested in betting my entire livelihood on the YouTube algorithm, so uploads are going to be infrequent and on stuff I genuinely want to talk about. That being said, if you do want to stick around for more, feel free. Be glad to have you.